Louisiana versus all y'all's Recruit That Boot. I'm Jarrett Roser. He's Sam Spiegelman, and it is June, which means that all of these official visits and college camps are hitting fast and furiously. This is Wednesday afternoon. LSU has already had a kicking camp under its belt. They had a bunch of out-of-state guys in particular come make visits this past weekend. Thursday is an elite camp. Saturday is a 7-on-7, and so a lot is happening very quickly, and we've gotten a lot of reactions from some of those prospects that have made their way through Baton Rouge, and a lot of positive reactions coming out of those experiences this past weekend. Sam, you said it was trying to remember what word you used for this weekend, just kind of a weird weekend in some ways with some of these official visits, not just for LSU, but Louisiana guys heading elsewhere. But how was your kind of official kickoff weekend of this phase of the recruiting cycle?
Yeah, this is the top. This is summer official visit season. This is one of the busiest, most outrageous times of the recruiting calendar. May had a few surprises. July will have even more, but everything that happens in between is absolute pandemonium. You get the post-visit commitments. You have post-visit changes at the top of some of these leaderboards for some of these top kids. Listen, it's official visit season. It's not just, hitting a school and finding out if you have an offer or you fit in with the scheme. If you're officially visiting, you are getting the red carpet treatment. You are talking NIL. You are talking about commitment timelines, which in the year of 2025 is usually sooner rather than later. Most of these kids, 70 to 80% will be committed before their senior seasons in August. So this is the bare bottom business gets done visits. First weekend was absolutely crazy. We've had a couple of commitments. Some today are going to come. Some tomorrow are going to come. But and that's going to be a theme throughout the month. But I think it gets a little bit weirder every single year. You've heard some teams being connected to kids that we've never connected them before. And we got 3 more weekends to go. So the first weekend was fun. And I think it's only going to get more and more fun as the rest of the month goes on.
I think the development of recruiting from cycle to cycle that you're talking about, and it getting weirder, where all of a sudden there's just this more out of left field curveball. LSU fans are certainly going to remember how aggressively the Bryce Underwood situation flipped on them in the span of about a month there. Just a few months ago, 6 or 7 months ago. And just look at the dynamics that the NIL era has injected into recruiting, which has always been chaotic and fluid to begin with. But now, because the numbers are juiced up the way they are, things can turn on a dime that much more readily. But it sounds like for LSU, obviously, right now, the early makings of this recruiting class, one of the top ranked in the country, pretty much across the board, across all the networks, and seems like a lot of really positive vibes coming out of this weekend for a lot of the guys that did have a chance to visit. When you look at some of those guys this weekend and some of the takeaways that you've had a chance to hear, who do you think you look at and say, this was the biggest storyline, or these were the couple biggest storylines in terms of the impact LSU was able to make out of this weekend?
Yeah, starting at the top, LSU you mentioned Bryce Underwood. Well, that opened the door for Joe Sloan to have to find his guy for this 2026 class. That guy is Bo Bentley. Made his second visit back to Baton Rouge this weekend after visiting in March, caught a game at the box, had his first spring practice visit back then. And, I think this visit for Coach Kelly, for Coach Sloan and Bo, their top quarterback target, was about kind of showing him a day in the life of what it would be like to be an LSU quarterback. And when you look at this LSU quarterback room over the years, and you see guys like Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels and now Garrett Nussmeier, I think that carries a lot of weight with someone like Bo, who is not only paying attention to the overall program and fit, but the quarterback's coach, and that's of course Joe Sloan, who has taken a really strong involvement in this recruitment and has LSU knocking on the door. If you were to give me truth serum, I think that LSU took a slight lead over Oklahoma going into this Oklahoma visit. But of course, there was some chatter that Bo might not take both visits if he didn't need to. So the fact is, LSU didn't do enough to secure the commitment. Bo is going to take both of these visits and likely have a decision before the end of this month. Again, I think LSU put itself in a strong position after this weekend. Oklahoma still has a quarterback committed, and Bo has a great relationship with Ben Arbuckle over there in Norman. I think that it was as close to 50-50 going in. And now with LSU in front, it'll be about how that day in the life as an LSU quarterback compares to what Bo sees as a day in the life as a Sooners quarterback. You have to remember he grew up in the DFW area, a fan of the Sooners, but he has been very adamant that he has not made his decision yet. He is not going off of fan feelings. He is trying to look at this objectively, and I think that I don't have a pick in, but as of today, I feel like LSU is the team to beat with Bo.
It's kind of what
Secondly,
I was about to say.
go
I
ahead.
mean, I feel like with Bo's situation, I'm in a very similar place to you. It has felt like LSU has been in a great position with him for such a long time, and every time he's whittled that list down, okay, here's the top four, here's the top three, here's the top two. I never questioned that LSU was going to be in each of those cuts, but at the same time, I have also yet to put in any sort of prediction on him because it feels like it could be interesting here in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I don't think either one of these schools would surprise anybody if he picked either one. I am obviously paying close attention to how this weekend in Oklahoma does go. Um, Deuce Gerald, the number 2 defensive lineman on Rivals, comes in. He's a kid from Baton Rouge. Dad played at Scotlandville, was recruited by some guy named Frank Wilson, who was on Ed Orgeron's staff at Ole Miss. Connect the dots. LSU has kind of been in that lead group of schools with Deuce for the most of his recruitment, but they've been battling, college football powerhouses, Ohio State, Oregon, Ole Miss, where Dad played. Florida State, Georgia, Alabama, every school has been in the mix with Deuce for the past 2 years. But I think after this visit, LSU has kind of surged. If they're not top one, in that top 2 or 3 right now, I think the confidence has elevated in Baton Rouge about their chances. And when you look at this and you look at their board for the D linemen, they got a commitment from Big Rich Anderson at a car, the number 1 defensive lineman in the country. They are very much in the mix with Lamar Brown, who is the number 1 athlete in the country that is being recruited to play on that defensive line. And now I think they're in that lead in the mix very much for Deuce Gerald's, who, again, the number 2 defensive lineman in the country, another blue chipper to possibly fill in that defensive line, obviously an area of focus for LSU. And with a lot of moving pieces with Lamar Brown, you have to like where you sit with someone like Deuce Gerald out of Georgia.
The amount of trench guys, I guess, overall that we heard from this past weekend, whether it be offensive linemen, which we'll talk about 1 or 2 of those here in a second, or the guys on the defensive front like a Deuce Gerald's or a Trenton Henderson from Pensacola Catholic on the edge, Jamarian Carlton out there in Texas, guys that really seem to have great trips and tell whether it be you or Steve Wilfong or Chad Simmons or whoever they had a chance to connect with in the past couple days since that trip and reference, this was an eye-opening visit. LSU is kind of surged to the front or is near the top of my list, or they set the standard, or however different guys have kind of phrased it. The quality of guys that were on this visit, if LSU can land a couple of those guys, I mean, that's big when you look at the foundation that's already there that you reference on the defensive side with Rich Anderson. If you go get, a Deuce and one of those edge rushers and then still, are pushing for a Lamar Brown, that's the foundations of a pretty nasty class. And so while we're hearing a lot of volume and quantity to go with the quality coming out of this weekend, as long as they hit on a few of those guys, you've got to like where they stand moving forward with this class.
Yeah, as you know, they're going to bring in a ton of more big names this weekend and the weekend after, and of course, close it out with June 20th, their biggest official visit weekend. Another visitor from the state of Texas that was in town this weekend. You mentioned offensive line, Zayden Krempin, top 20 offensive tackle in the country out of Prosper. Jared, I saw Prosper play when Zayden was a sophomore. and all 5 of their offensive linemen are either going to sign in Power 4 conferences or have already signed and are playing in the college level, which goes to show you how insane Texas is when it comes to certain positions. But Zayden Krempin returned to LSU this weekend for his OV. He camped for Brad Davis last summer when we were there. Has returned multiple times, including I think 3 different times, including this last visit in this offseason alone. Um, his host was Bo Bordelon and Zach Weeks. Spent time with both the brothers, the Bordelon and the Weeks brothers. And listen, LSU was battling Texas A&M, and Michigan for Krempin. Texas has really been the team that we've most connected this in-state kid with. I think LSU has moved to the top with Zayden after this visit. He has confirmed as much. The confidence in LSU about Zayden Krempin landing there went up drastically over the weekend. My prediction has moved from Texas to LSU. Obviously, he still has A&M on the docket. He has got Texas on the docket, and he'll close everything out in Michigan at the end of the month. But I think LSU is now the team trending with this Dallas area offensive tackle. They're in the mix with several elite offensive linemen like Darius Gray and Emmanuel Tucker, who decommitted from Mississippi State and will OV this weekend. But Brad Davis is out looking for tackles, and I think this staff loves Zayden Krempin not only as the player because he's a fantastic project at offensive tackle, but I think they love his personality. I think he kind of fits in that room better than most people realize. So I've moved my prediction from Texas to LSU, and I feel pretty confident that Zayden Krempin is going to be a Tiger when he's ready to sign.
I feel like it's time for me to put in a prediction. Just when you said the Bordelon and Weeks brothers were in the mix, you gotta give credit to those guys. And Zayden, his previous trip to Baton Rouge this spring, had a chance to take that picture with Will Campbell and kind of caught a lot of attention as you bring in the big guns into the recruiting process with a guy like Big Will, and then you follow that up with the Bordelons and the Weekses. That look, Brad Davis knows what he's doing in terms of his relationships with these offensive line prospects as well as the players he's getting involved for sure.
I mean, the Bordelons. I mean, this is like the first families of Louisiana you have recruiting you to LSU. I mean, how do you say no to that? Yeah, and one more Texas name to throw out there, Jalen Lott. A lot of people listening may not be too familiar. His dad played at Texas. Texas loves this kid, but I think LSU again made a pretty big splash with Jalen Lott, who's been back on campus a few times. He's already logged OVs to Georgia, to Colorado. But I think this race is going to come down to LSU, Texas, and Oregon. LSU is recruiting him at receiver, but also Corey Raymond is involved in this recruitment, which I think is unique compared to Texas and Oregon, which they've picked their Oregon on offense, Texas on defense. I don't know if it'll work, but I think having the flexibility and just being, hey, we just want you and we'll figure out your position later. There's a growing confidence in that building right now about their chances with Jalen, who, in my opinion, is one of the most explosive players, regardless of position in the country. And for a Texas legacy, that LSU continues to soar up that list, just something worth paying attention to as he goes through these final visits, and he'll also have a decision made next month.
It's kind of use that opportunity talking about Jalen to focus more on this 2026 wide receiver class and, a storyline elsewhere this weekend related to an LSU commit. I feel like every 2 weeks, we're just kind of cycling back to updates of, all right, here's where this crazy, potentially epic wide receiver class for LSU is kind of situated. And the latest is obviously we talked about in mid-May, Ja'Kai Anderson is now an SMU commit, and so you have the 3 names still in the fold of Tristan Keys, the Hattiesburg star up there in Mississippi, as well as the 2 in-state guys, Jabari Mack from Destrehan and Kenny Darby from Airline. We'll talk a little bit about each of those guys, I guess, but Kenny Darby is kind of the headliner at the moment after taking the weekend trip to Tuscaloosa, and I think some comments from him kind of spiraled and maybe took on more of a life of their own than he intended to when he was, kind of talking about his weekend, where all of a sudden people are wondering, wait, is there a July 4th college decision from a guy that's been committed since November and, said he's shut down and all these different things. What is your read on, I guess, particularly where Kenny's at? Because I think we're both kind of on the same page of LSU fans should probably be less worried about him than maybe they were 3 days ago. But using the Kenny situation to also look at the receiver group as a whole, knowing that, Tristan Keys is going to take some more visits as well. And Jabari Mack is a coveted prospect that Texas and Ohio State and a bunch of others love. What is the comfort or confidence level for LSU fans in, your suggestion for them in terms of how to look at this summer, as all these schools continue to keep calling and kind of kicking the tires on the opportunities to flip these guys?
Yeah, I think that not only was the public shocked when Kenny Darby announced, or when we put out that, I mean, I put it out I think last Wednesday that he was taking his OV to Alabama. I was also shocked that he told me that.
Yeah.
Not only was I shocked, I think that Cortez Hankton was shocked. I think that Joe Sloan and Brian Kelly were shocked. I think that Brad Davis was shocked. I think that Corey Raymond. I don't think Corey Raymond really knew, but I think he would be shocked. Um, Listen,
Corey's not worried
Kenny,
about that wide receiver, man. Not unless Kenny's coming to play corner, which he's shown some ability to do a little bit of that on the the 7-on-7 circuit. But Corey's focused on his guys, and Jalen Lott's the only receiver that he's worried
he's
about right now.
yeah. Corey's like, did you see where Havon Finney was this weekend? Listen, Kenny came out and said, I love Alabama. He loves his relationship with Jamarcus Shepard, Alabama's wide receiver coach, who, much like Cortez Hankton, has a reputation for being arguably the best receivers coach in the country. And Alabama is a school that was chipping away at Kenny early in the offseason, got him on campus, and then after that visit, like you mentioned, he shut his recruitment down, at least temporarily. That being said, even though he logged this visit, got it out of the way, I'm about 99.5% sure that he will be signing with the purple and gold in December. And if there is any announcement on July 4th, I think I said it off air, I don't even expect that there will be one at that time. It'll be that his recruitment is shut down and he is a Tiger. I think that the context here is key. He spent Memorial Day weekend in Baton Rouge with Tristan Keys, with Jabari Mack, with Tez Hankton, training, getting chemistry down. When he flipped to LSU in the first place and then, shut his recruitment down, I think all these signs point to a very popular recruit that is still getting, coaches checking in to see how solid he is. And, who could blame a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid for wanting to take an official visit to Tuscaloosa? At the end of the day, I think LSU has done enough to not only win over Kenny, but his mom, members of his family, member of his circles. And from a high school perspective, Kenny's commitment from the airline high school perspective to LSU is monumental in that part of town. I think that there was a little bit of smoke and now it's out. I would be shocked if he signed anywhere else. Tristan Keys is the obvious name that LSU fans really need to keep monitoring. After OVing Miami this weekend, Miami feels that they are going to be in it with Tristan Keys, who, as of this taping, was on campus at Ole Miss today, working out with the Hattiesburg Tigers. Obviously, it's a school-related visit as opposed to Tristan Keys visiting, but Tristan Keys will be in Oxford eventually. That is the commitment to be watching, whether it's in July, August, or December when Tristan makes the final decision.
Trying to keep up with those dynamics is so much, and particularly in again the modern landscape of things where there are bigger dollar figures than ever associated with these recruiting processes. As much as, we go back, and one recruiting process that stands out to me was all of the visits that Cardell Thomas and Ty Davis Price were taking, and fans wondering, should we be concerned about this? And sitting down with those guys at Southern Lab, and they're saying, look, our parents have put so much into our young football lives at this point. If we can go to a whiteout game at Penn State, why would we not take that opportunity to go see this cool thing elsewhere, to go to Tuscaloosa and have the red carpet rolled out, or wherever the case may be. And so that's always been kind of an interesting piece of the conversation for commits and, the comfort level of those college coaches of these guys continuing to go through that process and experience some of these things. And now in the modern world, the more another school wants you, the better your leverage is to make sure that you're kind of being compensated, you and your family, to a certain degree, and checking and making sure you understand what that market is. Um, it is not fun for fans to keep up with, but it is, I mean, for a variety of reasons, remains kind of a piece of this that makes all the sense in the world for prospects, whether it be just to experience things, go see it, whether it be knowing where that market value is and, having some interest to back it up, or, unfortunately as well with the transfer portal era, to have relationships in place with some of these other places, if there ever does come a time for a second recruitment.
No, 100%. We've always said, you're committed, you're not signed just yet. Now more than ever, that statement rings even more true. And from a fan's perspective, of course, you get excited when a 5-star like Tristan Keys or Big Rich Anderson commits to you, and as a junior or in the spring before all these OVs. But it's a lot to ask these kids to completely shut down their recruitments if they give you an early commitment, because even though they commit early, I think that it actually makes their mind wander more after, when they see like their peers going on these official visits, and they certainly hear about the dollar figures that are thrown out. And like we said at the top of the show, the red carpet treatment. Like, if you have those opportunities, but you're withholding that just because you want to be loyal to a program, it begs the question of how loyal is that program going to be to you. So I think it's in their best interest to take those visits. And I think, if you're the LSU staff or any staff with a committed player, you want those kids to feel confident about their decisions, and you want them to go see what else is out there, go see what other offers are out there, go find a cornerback coach that's going to develop you better, or go find a scheme fit as a defensive lineman that's better than what we got going on here. And if you do, go there, because we want people that want to be here, that we want people that are bought into our culture, our mantras, and are content with the NIL that we're going to give. And because that, a lot of schools can't change that. That's not the case for every school in the country. Some schools can throw a bag at you, and a huge bag at that. But most schools are on a more even playing field. So they kind of you have to be bought in for us to take you. And if not, we're just going to over recruit you.
I know for years we've kind of reminded fans on one side of this equation too. Coaches leave, change jobs left and right, and whether of their own volition or because of a change that the university athletic department decides to make. And also in recruiting processes, coaches back off of prospects and end up going a different way down the stretch sometimes. And so not completely putting your head in the sand as a prospect and thinking, I'm going to be safe and I'm not going to talk to any other schools the rest of the way, can put you at in a tricky spot sometimes if some of those, potential situations unfold in those ways. This, at the same time, for recruits, recognize that college coaches become very quickly aware of which guys love football and which guys love the idea of playing football with their program, and which guys are falling in love with being a recruit and chasing bags and all those things. And so if you don't have your priorities in line and you're more, clout or bag chasing, that can also come back and burn you, depending on how you and your family are approaching some of these situations. I don't know how many high school football players have 25-minute attention spans in 2025 to be this deep into an episode. I can't get my girlfriend to watch a movie without being on TikTok, so I don't know about the high school kids at this point. So, but if any of them are this deep in, I hope that message can be helpful to some of them as well.
I hope it's marinating right now if they're already to minute 26.
We'll wrap it up, man. I did want to give you a quick report from my first high school 7-on-7 stop, which I wish I didn't put a piece of ice in my mouth right before you stopped talking, for me to now be dealing with how cold my gum and teeth are. But went down to Desserham. I'm just going to work through it, just chew through it. Went down to Desserham, saw
Adversity, baby.
Desserham, St. James, Shaw, St. Aug and East Ascension, I was in, as you can see, a green and white shirt. And so I had both Coach Valdez and Purple Knights players asking me, what's the deal? Are you here with Shaw? Or are you're the Shaw guy today? What's happening? And had to put them at ease. I'll be in some purple and gold again here on a day to see them soon. But Carr didn't make it this week, unfortunately. Jabari Mack and Jackson Fields weren't there for me to watch for Destrehan. But one guy that we both know really well that was there for Destrehan and able to put in some work, which was nice to see after the spring where he was still kind of, in holdout mode, following his transfer. Jalen Ash looked fantastic, particularly considering he wasn't having the opportunity to work with Jackson Fields today. He's somebody that is going to be a big piece of that offense this fall, it appears, and looks poised for a breakout season. I'm imagining you're not too surprised to hear that. That kid is all arms and legs and can get around that field and make folks miss and get up and go catch the ball over defenders. So you could still see he's kind of working out some kinks and getting comfortable with his new home over there. But all the big flashes and exciting potential were on display for sure this morning.
Yeah, could you imagine if Greg Wilfred wasn't catching passes from John Johnson in Algiers? Because that would be a nasty receiving core over there in the river parishes. But I love it. Obviously, with Destrehan, we're hoping that Jabari Mack has that breakout, super ultra productive wide receiver one season with Jackson Fields healthy this year for the Wildcats, and with Jalen Ash as a complimentary receiver opposite of Jabari. Yes, he is maybe 150 pounds soaking wet. He is basically like Gumby, but he has maybe the best hands, I think. And this is extremely hyperbolic, which is not my style. But I have never seen Jalen Ash drop a pass, and the only other person I can ever say that about is Devontae Smith. And much like Devontae Smith, he is also he is a slim reaper. I think getting in that Destrehan weight program will be excellent for Jalen, and two, also getting out of Rummel where they haven't thrown the ball since they had Jamar Chase. But I just think it really helps Jabari have the season that he is hoping to have. And I think it'll be a great opportunity with so much focus on Jabari for Jalen Ash to step up, see more targets, and make the most of those targets, which he really has throughout the offseason at various camps and 7-on-7 settings. Jalen has been maybe not like always the top performer, but always amongst them, from the Under Armour camp in New Orleans to OT7 to even Rivals camp in Dallas. I had a lot of people saying, like, have you seen Jalen Ash? Did you see this catch? Did you see that catch? He has a flair for just freaky great catches. Like I said, he does not drop the ball. And I think this could be not only a breakout season for Jabari, but potentially Jalen as well.
Yeah, two obviously very different receivers, and a lot of. I mean, you just look at the builds, and Jabari is. I'm not going to say a Mack truck. He's still a wide receiver, but he's 6', 6'1", and solidly built for a high school receiver at 200, 205 pounds. And then Jalen is the long, lean weapon. And those two guys have known each other for so long. I mean, guys that have come up around one another, have watched them kind of joke with each other through some 7-on-7 and camp settings through the years. And so looking forward to the way that they're able to kind of play off of one another in that offense with Jackson Fields at the helm for Destrehan, as the Wildcats throw the ball around a bunch this fall. One of our other buddies, Hank Tierney, was joking with Coach Valdez on the way out and said, we might have just thrown the ball more today, then we're going to throw it all season, with the way that the Eagles are going to try and run the ball around a little bit. And so one guy we did have a chance to see that I think I don't know. I know you and Hank are buddies that are probably, making bedtime, good night coach, good night Sam calls. So you may already know this kid, but
Definitely.
I'm hoping I might have a chance to put a Shaw kid on your radar a little bit, in Balin Jackson, who will be a freshman this fall. He's a wide receiver in the, cringe for a second, the 2029 class that we're going to be talking about for the years to come. A basketball kid, a 6'4", tall, long receiver for that Shaw offense. That it's going to be a process for him. Certainly, he's still a young kid, but you see some of the potential there and the athleticism he brings. He's Greg Monroe's nephew, the former standout New Orleans basketball player who went on to the NBA for years and years. And so he's someone that was fun for me to see out there for the first time, getting a little bit of work and looking like he's going to have an opportunity to play some here as a freshman and then be a guy that gets a chance to develop in that Shaw program over the next 4 years. So Balin Jackson, remember that name.
I'm writing it down as we speak, or more accurately, I will be texting you for his Twitter when this podcast is over. Listen, I've been to Helen Cox multiple times, have seen the Greg Monroe banners ample times. Our good friend Josh Preston has basically lived in that gym for the past 12 years. He can also attest. But my main point is that Hank Tierney, when he returned to Shaw in such triumphant fashion, not only did he deliver the state championship last year with two absolute studs that are now in Ann Arbor, he changed the landscape of the West Bank. I mean, Shaw is getting these players again. I mean, Jasper Parker and Jacob Washington, two of the best in the country, by the way, played for Shaw last year. It just hasn't been the case in a decade plus. I mean, at least. So I love that superstars. Listen, it's very easy for superstar young talent kids on the West Bank to go to Carr or go up to Warren Easton or wherever they want to play. But with Hank Tierney back at Shaw, I mean, all is good in the world. When I text him before I go to sleep each night, I say, the West Bank is yours, Hank. And he reminds me of all these 2029s, these 30s. I got Mama calling me on line 2, telling me, have you seen this cornerback? It's all is good in the world when Shaw has the best West Bank talent. And I'm appreciative that you wore your Shaw green today, Jarrett.
Yeah, I confused. It seemed like the St. Aug crew was the most confused or frustrated with me for being in the Shaw colors. I guess they probably see me in purple and gold as much as any other color combination of the Louisiana versus all y'all shirt. But talking to Hank some in the spring and just asking how has life been around school and around the community since the state championship and getting back to that point for the first time since the 1980s. And he was just beaming with excitement about, I guess, all of the excitement around the program and the amount of kids that were wanting to come out and play football, the amount of kids that were wanting to come enroll at Shaw, and just the impact that can have on an entire school, obviously, particularly a private school there, but also the way that the kids were handling the situation. All of, you graduate Jacob and Jasper, and you have some key pieces back and you want to see, are they going to be satisfied, or what's their hunger level and work ethic going to be as they kind of come down from that state championship run and start to refocus for now 2025. And he said all of that has been great. The guys have been in there. The workout attendance all spring and all winter and all spring has been phenomenal. And so really exciting days over there for the Eagles. I also want to know, with your phone, you said you jokingly, I air quotes jokingly, say you're telling Hank, hey, look, the West Bank is yours. Someone who might watch 33 minutes of this, or however deep we are, Norm Randall over there at Carr, some of our friends at these other schools are going to be hitting you up and wondering the hell the West Bank is, Hanks. There's a few of us over here that, Sam, you need to keep in mind, we're all, state championship and district championship contenders over on this side of the river. And so don't give it all to Hank just yet, because there's a few schools over there to keep in mind, man. They're going to let you hear about it.
What Norm doesn't know is that I said the West Bank is yours, asterisk, but Algiers belongs to the Cougars. Don't even step over there, okay? If I even catch you over there, it'll be a violation to the LHSA. Nobody is arguing with the job that Bryce and his staff are doing at Carr University, okay? The Carr University, they are doing absolutely, positively great.
Yeah, they're going to be great. A lot of these teams are. It's going to be fun to watch them continue to develop over the summer. And shoot, we'll be to some Friday nights in the fall before we know it. But until then, it's going to be an incredibly active camp season on these college campuses and everything else going on for the next couple months. So looking forward to some more days out there in the sun and some more afternoons back on the computer and kind of chopping it up with Sam and talking about just kind of the latest buzz from the the camp circuit, the visit circuit, and some of the things we're seeing out there with some of these prospects around the state and around the country, really.
I agree, man. It's fun times.
He's Sam Spiegelman. I'm Jarrett Roser. This is Louisiana versus All Y'all's Recruit Dat Boot. Until next time, y'all be well.